The following program was produced by an independent community producer. The opinions expressed do not necessarily reflect those of the ECAT staff or board of directors.
Come to you from underneath a peach blossom. It's time for an episode of BeAuSm. Find positivity throughout your life and work. Just like our mascot rooster, Steve the Jerk.
Hello and welcome to the BeAuSm Podcast. I'm your host, Joshua Peach, and Mark Resnick is busy packing books. This is day 2 after the release. It is Pi Day, 3/14, and I am excited for a three-peat guest, another, now I can say fellow author, my friend, childhood friend, John Cady, who you came on this podcast probably a year ago.
Yeah, about a year ago.
Yeah. So welcome back for the third time. I think.
Thank you.
Adam, is this the first third someone been here 3 times? Probably is. Santa Claus, I think, has done 3 times. So you're in good company.
Good company.
You're in good company with Santa Claus.
Is there, like Saturday Night Live, is there like a 5-timers club I can aspire to?
Yeah, I think there might. We can come up with something.
Perfect.
I mean, that's just we gotta think about, like, yeah, we should probably come up with like a special sport code or something that you wear.
Perfect.
Yeah, like the top dog of being invited back so many times. But I think it's great to one, keep up with certain guests that are going through a pretty fast life chapter, if you will. You wrote your first book of a trilogy last March 25th, right?
Yep.
And that launched, Angela of Death. Then you had the second book, which was in essence, it was mostly completed, right? You had one big book. If I remember correctly in the first podcast, you had one big book that turned into 2 small to medium-sized books. So
Correct.
The second book, Angela of Death, Iron Sharpens Iron, right?
Yep.
That's part 2.
Good memory.
So that came out when?
That came out September 9th. It came out in September.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that launched. But this third one, you had to start from scratch.
Yeah.
Write it. And, I mean, even if you started March 25th of last year, you wrote, how long is it?
It's roughly the same length of pages as the other one. Like, it's probably, it's not like a full fantasy type novel that you think of when you see them, but it's more like it's about 200 and I think it's like 240 pages.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a lot.
It is, but once you get into, and you'll find out, once you get into, because I assume that's not, not going to be your last book, but once you get into that groove, your mind is in that groove, and you obviously you know how to discipline yourself for certain projects or whatever. It's clearly. So
no,
it's one of
I don't. That's why I needed help with Mark. Like, you're doing this without a net. Yeah. You're doing this by yourself. I had Mark and others to help. I'm not that guy. You're that guy. You're the guy that texts me in the middle of the night saying, "I'm in the zone. I'm just creeping through pages like crazy." Yeah. That's my attention span on that goes right out the window.
It's one of those, it's one of those things. Like, as long as I dedicate an hour of it a night, then that's, And if I don't go over an hour, that's fine. But if I do go over an hour and I'm exhausted the next day, as long as I did some writing, if it was good writing, then I'm happy exhausted.
Yeah. So when you wrote the original big book, did you write it to be a series, or did you write it to just be that one big book?
I wrote it to be that one big book, and then it was because I wasn't really even reading a lot of fantasy back then, so I wasn't even thinking like, everything, fantasy has to be basically a series. Like, it's common for it to be a series, but that was like just one standalone book, and then when he broke it into, it got broken into 2. But then when I saw him post, this is the first of a trilogy, I'm like, ooh, a trilogy. It's like one of those things where I'm like, oh yeah, these turn into fantasy books turn into series.
But I mean, the story was complete.
Yeah,
you took it to your publisher, and you said, here's my book that I want to have published that has a start and has an ending. How hard was that to take it and break it into 2 books and then go, oh, now I need to have a third part to the story? Is that the ending, or is it leaving it open for
this? Yeah, this.
I mean, is
so
this like
not,
the Fast and the Furious that the first one ended and you're like, wow, that was a cool ending, and next thing you know, we're 14 movies later with The Rock, and you're going,
right,
how'd he get in here?
Right. Yeah. But this one, so the way the storyline's going, like there's gonna be like they're working towards a great battle, and the great battle, like there's been some good battles in it, but they haven't got to that next great battle, the one they keep referencing. So there's gonna be there's gonna be more books in the series. I'll put it that way.
So
I don't know how many more, but there's gonna be more.
It's a trilogy to be determined.
Yeah, so it's a trilogy, and then like the next one will be another. It won't be the same. It's hard to explain. Like it'll be its own trilogy, but it'll kind of tie in with that one.
Yeah. So it's like the superhero movies.
Yeah, basically.
We were just talking about that in the previous recording. So you basically had to build a fresh storyline building off of a one book. How hard was, like, when we talk about my book, and it's completely different, but my book's done. Like this book it's complete. Like I'm not going to carry on like Grace Part 2 or anything like that. Like how hard was it for you to initially like wrap your brain around like, oh, I need to do a third one?
It went from it went from I need to do a third one to like I get to do a third one. So I kind of put myself in that mindset where I'm like, oh, I get to. It'd be like if I was writing like fantasy movies, like a Star Wars type thing, and like, oh, you get to do another one. Oh, you get to keep going until the story is finished, and so it's one of those things like you're almost playing with characters that you created. You're like, oh, what do I get to do with them now?
Yeah.
Like, this might be cool. And then as long as you keep that ending in sight that you want to have, however you get there, just have fun. It turns the third book was a lot more fun to write than the first book. The first book was just kind of like, I like getting this story. I want to get this story down. I think it's a good story. And the third one was like, I get to play with the characters I created. So it's kind of fun in that sense.
You're 11 days out from the book being available, from being released. You've got a pre-release on your publisher's website. You've got a pre-release for Kindle, I'm assuming, on Amazon.
Yep.
You're ridiculously calm. I've been anxiety riddled since December. Is the book completely completed?
Well, the first book I was like that. I was like that the first book, but then in the second book a little like that, but third book now it's just like it's a fun ride.
Yeah.
So once you get to the part where it's just a fun ride doing all this, like especially like going on podcasts and just like doing fun stuff on social media with it. Once you get to that fun part, then it's just.
But the book's done.
Yeah, it's just
book's done.
Yeah.
It's formatted. It's set up. Amazon's ready to rock and roll with it.
Yeah.
Your pre-orders are already ordered. You're 11 days out. I don't think we were that at 11 days out.
No, but I mean, it was also your first one.
Yeah, I guess so. I guess I have to do a second one too.
Yeah, and you
be more relaxed.
Well, I read your first one, so you should do a second one. If my opinion, if my opinion holds any weight there.
Well, I don't know. So your opinion matters a lot. You were the first person we sent out it looked like it was just to you, but we sent out a list of chosen people of all different parts of my life, and what I do, when you look at a lot of people that do some of the things that I do, not a lot of them have people that they've known for 40 years that are willing to do the things that people that have known me for 40 years do, right? But you were the first person. It was as if you knew the email was coming. You were the first person to be part of our launch team, to get a digital copy ahead of everybody else, to tell us what you thought, as well as to help build the ratings and reviews and everything else, which I'm forever grateful for, and you'll be on any other launch thing. But I'll tell you, this is a 10-year thing for me. Like I started an idea of writing a book 10 years ago, and what I started 10 years ago and what we have today, completely different thing, completely different. And like right now, I mean, it's so surreal to think about. And I'll ask you what it was like for you the first time you held your first book. Like what was that like?
Oh, the first time I held the middle grade horror book that I had, that I was first let me actually even go a little back further than that, is when I started having like my short stories in anthologies, like I used to order like every one of the anthologies, I would grab it, and I'm like, the second I got the first one I was ever in, I was like running around, everybody look, but it was one of those, and then you keep going with that, and then when it was just the Attack of the 3D Zombies, which it was just me that had written it, and no other authors in there, like an anthology, I was like, oh, this is me. This is, and it was one of those things where you get all excited, and I even messaged R.L. Stine on social media. Yeah. I'm like, Mrs. Stein, you were such an influence. I finished my, I wrote, my book came out, Attack of the 3D Zombie, and he writes back and he goes, hey, good luck with it. He goes, that's awesome. And I'm like, R.L. Stein just said that. The Goosebumps guy. It's like one of those things where you're like, okay, this is cool. And then it's just one of those things, you still, like, when I get my copies of this next book, I'm going to be equally excited. It's just one of those cool feelings.
Your name's on it. Your story, your thoughts, who you are, all that fun stuff happens.
Yeah, and just like when you see the like the cover art that they came up with, and it just looks, when it's like their cover art, like the Josh came up with the idea, and then Susan Roddy is the cover artist. Like she made it happen, and it's just their ideas are like better than the ones I had in my head the whole time I'm writing it. So I'm like, I just can't wait to see what they got. And when you hold that, then when you're holding that, and you're like, this is really legit. Yeah. Like you get to that point, like where you're like, this is really legit.
Yeah, yeah. So my cover, I wanted absolutely nothing to do with it. I was like, we did a whole bunch of mock-ups, and we shared them on social media. And we what's interesting with our book was, and you're doing it grassroots. I mean, I see all the promotion you do. You're not boosting ads and buying ads for people and just trying to, pepper spray the world and spend money on stuff. You're doing it, organically with friends, family, and networks and things. And so the cover that had the most was the original. What the cover was going to be was BeAuSm Essential Elements to Living Your Legacy with Grace, with my picture of me on the stairs. That's at the Ames Garden behind the library. And I was like, I don't like it, but I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to leave it, because we went with who was the number, how many people really liked it. Yeah. And so we were literally like a week out. This was like maybe it was probably 2 weeks ago. And that morning, my oldest son and my fiance, they said, hey, fiance said, hey, you got to hear what Danny thinks about your cover. And he just let it go. And I was like, well, what should it look like? He's like, well, you should have the atoms, and you should do this. And then on the back is your picture, and you have your endorsements, and you do this. And literally within an hour, now nobody had talked to one another. Nobody knew how I felt. Yeah. Nobody knew anything. And within an hour, Mark calls me, and he's like, hey, I made a publisher decision. I was like, I don't know what that means, but what is it? And he's like, I'm going to send it over to you and have you look at it. And he literally sent over this cover, and it was 100% what my son envisioned that he thought was going to be great.
Oh, so he hadn't even...
Nobody knew what anybody was feeling. Nobody knew what anybody was feeling. Nobody knew. I didn't know what I wanted it to look like.
Yeah.
I just knew I didn't want it to look like what it looked like. And Mark made the changes and sent it over, and I showed it to them, and they were like, oh my God, how did that? And it's exactly what they both said. So
that's awesome.
Yeah. So we're like, there's the cover. And when I opened the first box, I was like, this is real, right? I mean, we got a bunch of pre-orders, and I made a commitment. Mark wasn't necessarily big on the idea of the pre-orders, because it's a lot of work. And my feeling was like, hey, if it doesn't pan out, we can just scrap the whole thing. Like, if we don't sell any pre-orders, we'll just scrap it. We don't need to go to bookstores. We don't need to go to Amazon. We can just, because you don't know.
Right. You know. Yeah.
Right? You don't know. And yeah, my mother bought a copy, and my family buys copies, but who else is going to buy copies, right? And so that was my thinking. So I said, I'll handwrite a card to every person that buys one, and I'll personalize every copy that gets ordered. And now I'm sitting here going to spend the weekend, personalizing every book, send them out 3 days later than Amazon's going to, because I committed to this thing. And I'm like, oh my God, all these people bought this book. Now the biggest fear is, what are they going to think about it?
Nah, well,
So
I've only seen good ratings.
Yep.
So far, good reviews.
Absolutely. And that's the other thing that I'll say. Authors, so far, just about every author I've met or talked to, they are the most kind, and I had a conversation with one the other day. He's written 3 books in a couple of different genres, and but someone that I consider a trusted resource and a guide. And he's like, "How you feeling?" I'm like, and for me, I always have to measure what success looks like what's winning look like. And for me, I said, something, the biggest challenge with this whole thing is I can't measure success. He's like, what do you mean? I was like, I don't know what to go off of. I don't know what the number of copies is that I should be like, wow, I win. This is great. And he just very calmly said, you published a book. You've won.
Right.
And it's like, I didn't think about that. I didn't think about so many people get to that 1 yard line and they don't publish a book, right? They have it written, but they don't publish it. And
right.
So he's like, you've won. I was like, man, that was deep. Thanks a lot.
Well, that's the thing. So this, mine took me 25 years to get, 25 years of writing to get to that point.
Yeah.
Where it's one of those things where, yeah, it's exactly like you said. Once you get there and someone said, oh yeah, I want to publish that, or once you publish, finish a book and you publish it and then people start buying it, that's right there. That is what,
yeah,
it's hard to put into words, but that is when you put that much time, like you said, you've been writing this for 10 years.
Yeah,
it's one of those things where to finally see it there and, hold it and read it, and then other people reading it and telling you how much it means to them and how much they like it, myself included, that's the goal.
Yeah. And
at least for me, that was the goal for me anyways.
Yeah.
It's just getting there.
Yeah. I'm looking at your calmness and I'm just like, man, that's where I want to be.
Yeah.
I'm still my brain right now is consumed of what do I got to do? What's going on? How do we get it? This is all going to, and I got to tell you, I'm sure you can attest to this, for finding I don't want to say a boutique publisher, but a small publisher that isn't a big, Penguin or whatever, because they're not going to take
the big five.
They're not going to take you or I out of the gate anyway. And I don't know that I necessarily even given the opportunity. I'm not David Goggins. I mean, for the type of books that I write. But Mark has been instrumental. The amount of work that he's taken on to take, the editor, the artist, like you said, the cover art. You have no idea how much is involved. That if I self-published this thing, I would have been in the weeds. I wouldn't even have been here.
I did self-publish a book in the honestly, I went through the Amazon Create space and the cover was so generic looking. It was it. I bet it looked like whoever else went through there. I bet my cover looked like 1,000 other covers.
Yeah.
It's just when it's one of those things that when you see the work, even on that cover, when you see the work that goes into that.
Oh yeah.
That looks so, and I hate to say it looks so professional. It is professional.
Yeah.
It's one of those things, but when I'm comparing it to the one that I had when I self-published, my covers now compared to the ones when I self-published, I wouldn't put the one I made next to it.
Right.
It would be, it would just be embarrassing. But
you have a museum of books, the start to the finish.
Yeah. Some people they're like, oh, I still got that one. I'm like, yeah.
Well, I mean, there's something to be said about it too. Is
Oh, yeah,
you know, not losing your roots is really important. Thanks for listening to another episode of the BeAuSm Podcast. If you are enjoying our episodes, please give us a 5-star rating and review on your favorite podcast platform, whether it's Spotify, Podbean, Apple Podcasts. Those ratings and reviews do make a difference in helping us get more exposure, more listeners, as well as giving people an insight and understanding as to what they could expect when they listen to our episodes. Thanks again, and you are awesome.
Now because, because of what happened a year ago, because Watertower took a chance on me and published the book that I had been working on. But if you had seen me in the years prior, when I was just not writing stories that I enjoy, but writing stories that I think would sell, trying to get them to agents, trying to get agents to get them to publishers, it was such a stressful, it wasn't as stressful as some other authors that were struggling, because I love my day job. So it's not, if it never happened, it never happened. I love my day job, but it's one of those things that author part of me that was. But
you wanted it to happen.
The guy that had the dream of being a published author was like, what do I got to do? What do I got to do? And that was me. How do I get there? Yeah, that was me for 25 years. That was what am I supposed to do? I won't be, in my mind, I was like, I won't be fully satisfied with, at least with that area of my life, until I get until I get published, so I can say I'm a published author. And then, but now it's just this is awesome. I got everything. It's one of those things where I got everything that I want right now. I don't need stuff. I have an awesome family. I got a job I love. I got great friends and family, and I have and I'm a published author now, so I'm I got everything I ever wanted. Yeah. This is just so that when you get to that point, it's just you're calm, you're happy, you're just you're having fun at this point. Yeah.
Now, last time you were here, there was a contest with one of the students, wasn't there? You were going to grow your hair out or something, right? What was it?
I won. Clearly, I won. No, but it was so. This beard is still growing because I lost a bet with a kid who it was an academic challenge, so a word search race that I always do with them. So he said, "All right, John, what do I get if I win?" And I'm like, same thing I always I give them incentives this they get a certain amount of coins so they can have a longer phone call with their loved ones or what have you. And he goes, "I want more than that." I'm like, "You want more than a longer call with your loved ones?" And then he goes, "Yeah, I want you to grow your beard as long as you can, and then be Santa Claus for someone." And I'm like, "Done." Yeah. So I was I was gonna lose anyway. I was gonna throw the contest anyways, and then so I grew it. And I dressed up as Santa Claus, and it was fun. And then but then another kid goes, "Yeah, I'll do it." And he goes, "But I want you to grow your hair I'm like, "No, it looks dumb if I do. It looks weird, not it looks weird like Unabomber type stuff going on." And I'm like, I can't do that. And then he goes, "All right, well, I hope you beat me." And I'm like, "Well, yeah." You
should send him a junior high school picture of you where you didn't have a lot of hair to begin with. Right. Yeah. Say this is about as long as it got.
Yeah, this is
about all I got.
For a while, I had the hockey player back, there, but without being a hockey player.
Yeah. And you didn't let him win.
No,
that's you doing the John Cady that I know, which is I let you win. Yeah. Yeah, the wrecking ball story.
The second kid had no shot at it. Yeah. I was like, nope, no. I beat him by 10 words. I'm like, I'm not playing. Yeah. I'm not playing this time.
So the first podcast we did, we I feel like we didn't even really scrape the surface of the book because we were talking so much about your kids, and I mean your kids and your work and your job, and you shared with me on that episode the love that you had for your job, and on the second one we tried to talk about your second book, and we got back in, and the kids you had them read the book. And they said it was fire and all these words that I don't know about. Yeah, tough fire. Yeah. So they don't get to read the third advance. Are they your launch team?
They're best. They're my basically they're my target audience, and they're my beta reader. No, I don't say beta readers because beta readers they read it before everybody else. Like
Mhm.
it'll come out and you know I'll bring some copies in and whatnot, and so they'll read it pretty quick though.
Yeah.
Like there was one every now and then a new kid comes in and he goes over to the bookshelf, sees them, and he's like, "This is you," and I'm like, "Yep." And so he's like he'll bring him back to his room and then he'll fly through them.
Yeah.
So which is great because you know right away I haven't had a kid tell me yet that it was like corny or anything.
Yeah.
They tell me my jokes are corny all the time, but they don't.
Well, yeah, I could agree with that.
Yeah.
I mean, some of them are funny.
I have to tell them 3 jokes a day. I've been doing that for like, I don't know, like going on 8 years now.
Yeah.
Because it was like, I had this like.
Where do you get 3 jokes a day from?
Off, like their dad jokes offline or whatnot. But it was, so I started out when I get like a desk calendar with dad jokes on it. And so I would read them like one a day and they're like, "Oh, read another one." I'm like, "Well, no, it goes, you know, it's by day or whatever." And then they're like, "All right." And so eventually it got to like 3 jokes. And so I'd have to, the night before I'd have to find 3 jokes and then I'd go in and they wouldn't, that was their routine in class. Like they need a routine. So they're like, "Well, you got to tell the jokes before we do the work." And I'm like, "All right." And so I'll tell them the jokes and then they're like, you know, thumbs up with them. You know, sometimes they'd laugh or whatever, but.
Yeah, I got to find the phone.
It was funny. One day in class, I was running late, so I didn't have the jokes prepared. And so they're like, "Well, you gotta." I said, "All right, well, I'll get some jokes." And so I had my, I forgot my laptop screen was hooked up to the big screen or whatever. And so I go and Google. I didn't even see the screen behind me. I'm like, going to Google, and one kid goes, "Wait a minute, are you Googling?" And I'm like, "Yeah." I'm like, that's how I get. And he's like, "These aren't all your jokes?" And I'm like, 3 jokes a day? Like, you think I make up 3 jokes a day? And he's like, "Yeah." And I'm like, "Well, thank you."
Yeah, thank you.
No, but I don't, yeah.
Where did you get that? Where did you come up with 3 jokes a day?
It was just one from the joke a day calendar, and then they wanted more that day, and then they just, like, got to, like, they need 3 jokes.
Yeah.
And then I'll be like, if they laugh at 2 of them, like, 2 for 3, and then, you know, or 1 for 3, and then sometimes 0 for 3, which...
I think that's a pretty good testament to the importance of laughter.
Yeah, it is.
These kids are in their worst time of their life.
Right.
Darkest days, difficult, uncertainty, fear, doubt, and the one thing that they want every day is three jokes.
Yeah, it's funny, they want their 3 jokes and they want their word search rates and then they're mine for the rest of the class. Like they'll do whatever work is there and they'll be engaged and they'll be talking about the work and the lesson and it's great. It's a pretty good trade. Mm-hmm. But it's funny. We'll have visitors like big wigs from whoever, my company or from Department of Youth Services, like come in and like while we're about to start class and I'll ask like random guy, I'm like, "Hey, how's your word search game?" And the guy will be like, "What?" And the kid goes, "Well, we race word searches in here," and he's like, "All right." And so the guy like he did it and he ended up destroying me and the kids were all like, "Oh, John, we got a new contender." And I'm like, yeah, but it's those little things that
you then said, "I let him win."
Yeah, no,
he's my boss. I let him win. Yeah.
He had to win.
I had to let him go.
But it's funny that it's those little things that, those little things mean big things to them, like you said, and then they get a routine, so they want those things, and then they're yours.
Well, I think it's people don't laugh enough.
Yeah, or have fun enough.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and maybe some of these kids didn't laugh at all, and that's what got them to where they are.
Yeah,
right. It got them hard and got them having to do stuff that we wouldn't think of doing. Wow. So the book is there a tagline? So the first is just Angela of Death. The second one is Angela of Death, Iron Sharpens Iron.
Yeah.
The third is
Angela of Death, Greater Love Hath No Man. So there's a lot of sacrifice in it. So.
Yeah. Did you come up with that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the storyline and everything else was just that. So fantasy has to be a lot more difficult than real life. That was like what I was talking about with mine. It was like the biggest thing I wanted to do was make sure that the level of accuracy of the story was as close to possible, making it readable. Like fantasy, like you can go. I mean, I could get lost, right? Like that's got to be like, how do you keep yourself kind of on that line of like how you develop it?
it's basically it's harder because well, for example, one of the book current book that I'm writing is about my teaching experiences. So I got to remember a lot of stuff like to that because I got to I have to have it accurate. Whereas with the fantasy, like I go through that quicker because it's just I know how I want the story to end, and I just know I know what needs to happen to get there, and I don't have to remember anything. I just have to,
you're like, that's
right. I just have to imagine it and then put it on the paper. And
we just off that person, whatever. That's good. Yeah.
I mean, there are certain things though where I'll say, and I'll forget about it, but then my editor Heather, she's awesome. She'll say, "Are you aware that in book 2 you did?" And I'm like, okay, well then that wouldn't make sense for that character to do that in book 3. So it's like those are the things that right there, that level of editing made the book better because it wouldn't have made like anyone who's read it like I've spoken with some people that are like not just the kids but like adults that have read it and they're like, I love it. What else are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? And it's one of those things where and they pick out all the little things in the stories like little scenes, little details, and they're like. That ties back in with book 2 or book. I mean, that ties back in with book 1. They hadn't read book 3 yet. Yeah. But I'm like, oh no, you're right. Yeah. And then it's one of those things where even there'll be parts where I'm like, oh yeah, that does kind of tie to Yeah. But unknowing, subconsciously like something foreshadowed something else from happen. That something that was gonna be happening. I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool how that happened.
Yeah. I think you naturally just weave it as the author and as the kind of in your brain. You just kind of put it all together and you don't think about the ties. And I think that's the beauty of that type of book is anybody can interpret it any way they want. Right. Which is pretty cool. So you teased the 4th book.
Yeah. So I've started coming up with ideas for the 4th book for Angela. And in the meantime, I also I'm working on the teaching book as well. Like I have that, cause it's one of those things where when working on 2 stories at once, at least for me anyways, it does away with any writer's block or battles off any writer, like staves off any writer's block. So if I can't think of one, like something I'm working on with the other one, I'm always also still working on the other thing.
Yeah.
So it's
that's what I was going to ask you. Like
it keeps my mind exercised like that, I guess you would
How
say.
much harder or easier is it to do a real life book opposed to a fantasy?
I found it harder because with fantasy, I just keep, I can keep coming up with these ideas on pushing this storyline along whereas in real life, I got to sit there and remember exactly what happened. Like a lot of it is, it's one of those things and then you got to flesh it out. You got to throw every detail you can think of in there and then flesh the story out.
Yeah.
And so, cause it's like anecdotes, like the you've had in your book, like I've been using anecdotes and I'm like, oh, that's good. I'll put that in. And then, but it's good because I have pretty much an outline to follow.
Yeah.
On that one, because it's a lot of it's talking about DYS and the great stuff they do. Not necessarily like my experience working with the kids, but also with just the department in general is they're doing a lot of good things.
Yeah. So
it touches on that and.
Well, and I don't know how vulnerable you get in your book, your real life book, but that was the biggest thing for me. Like that was, well, there was a couple of big things. One of the big things was I wanted every story in the book, and it would have been like 700 pages, and then I was like, it would have defeated the whole purpose. My purposes were easy read, easy to digest, takeaways, and comebacks. So we broke it out in chunks of the G, the R, the A, Z. And so, my first challenge was like, I want to put every story of my life in. Then I realized I couldn't. And then I'm like, all right, now we got to figure out which stories they are. And they weren't just me, as you know. They're the shinologist in Kansas City Airport.
I love that.
Kathy W. at American Airlines in Pensacola. Finding those stories and then reading it and getting vulnerable. Like you touched on with me the angry and abandoned, or abandoned and angry chapter. And you're like, dude, I didn't even know that part of your life even existed.
Right.
I was like, man, I forgot about it too until I wrote the book, right?
It was one of those things. I'm like, I've known this dude forever. I didn't know that.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah. But that vulnerability of putting yourself out there for stuff that people forgot, or may not have known, and that's the thing for me. I always felt like I was an open book anyway. I always felt like everybody, as you know, there's a chapter in there that talks about something that was very public, that was traumatic for me in high school, and I just always figured everybody knew everything, and it wasn't.
I didn't even know about that.
That's good. You didn't read the newspaper back then.
No. Nope.
You had to have known.
I didn't. I promise you, I didn't know.
Well, and here I thought everybody in high school knew. And
if I did know, I forgot.
Yeah, well, that's good. Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, what's interesting is that story in itself. I've had a couple of parents that have already called. They're like, I want to share this with my kid because, you know, they talk about going through things and like, I can't relate to them because I didn't have some traumatic thing happen. I'm like, yeah, well, at the time I didn't think it was that traumatic. I just kind of went about my business, and you know, the news came on, and there was my family. It was like, oh, there you go. It's a little shot in the arm for you of what people will do, and it was. I think it was for me. It was sharing that story was something important for me to do, so that people knew how a handful of people doing, you know, not being nice, shunning me, or doing whatever, made my family feel, and that that one person, your one actions to one person can springboard into something so monumental and huge that can stay with people, and just to be aware of it. And even when people are on their worst day, be the best person, right? So, but that vulnerability that's tough. I mean, I'm waiting for the first person that says, you know, that they don't like me because of something they said. You know, or they're like, oh, you know, because this happened to you in 1978, you know, this makes you a bad person. It's like, okay, well, feel how you want to feel, right? So, which the book wasn't made to make anybody feel bad for me. It was made to just give. That was the dark part. Resilience was like the dark, difficult part. That was the, you know, the gratitude. You open up with gratitude, which I think the first chapter was just great with my oldest son, and then the next chapter, First Date, First Wake, was supposed to be chapter 1. That was supposed to be something that grabbed
me that one on the phone.
That grabbed your attention. I was like, well, let's put a chapter 2, because I think my son's chapter was a good start.
Yeah,
but that was really good stuff. And then you get into resilience. You're like, that's probably where I feel the most vulnerable. Like if I were to say that if there was a part of the book that was really hard, it was resilience. The rest of them were.
Sometimes those are the most important parts of books like that, because like the readers are going through it, and they're like, if it's a book where it's all happy-go-lucky stuff, then they're like, oh, this was good. I got a lot out of it, but I didn't connect with it on the level I could have connected with it. Where when you include that stuff, you can definitely connect with that.
Yeah. Well, I'm not trying to change anything, but, you know, I invest every year in my professional development, my personal development. And you listen to these speakers and these presenters, and, you know, I'm a Tony Robbins fan. I mean, the guy has become extremely successful. I would say that he's saved countless lives. Like, I think that his, I mean, if you watch Netflix, I think it's I'm Not Your Guru or I'm Not Your Effing Guru. You see those.
I've seen the title.
Yeah, watch it. There's people in his audience that are hurting, and he helps them, and that's great. But there's a lot of other people that do the things that we do, that they never address the hard stuff. Like, they never address the trenches. It's all about, you know, have amazing grit and resilience and do all this stuff, but they never talk about the trench that they were in, or that they had to dig, or whatever it was. And that's what I was trying to change. I was trying to change.
Well, that makes it more authentic.
Yeah. Well, and
including that stuff.
That and having people, you know, like I talk about Terry and Todd Hedrick.
Yeah.
You know, but these guys are my best friends since the 3rd grade. Still my best friends, right? That's important. Like, I think it's important that people know that lasting in relationships that you forge at an early age, you can have them forever. You can get rid of them too. I mean, I had some friends that I just assume not have as friends from the third grade, but
Hedricks are awesome though.
Yeah,
they're those people, like, if I see one of them around town, like, that's someone you see and you, like, smile right away.
Yeah.
Because they're an awesome person and they're funny.
Yeah.
And on top of that, they're great person and just fun to talk to.
Yeah.
Our kids I've had kids on teams with Todd's kids and with Terry's kids, and it's just fun being on the sideline with them, rooting for our kids. And
you never know what you're gonna get,
right.
But you know you're gonna laugh. They always have something funny. And when the two of them together,
and I loved it. Like their story of like becoming like later on in life becoming police officers.
Oh yeah.
Like that's I always tell them, I'm like, that's awesome, like it's amazing or whatever. And then I one time I saw them and they said, hey, what have you been up to? And I'm like, oh, I just joined the police academy. You guys are trending now. Yeah. And then they're like, they started laughing. But I'm like, no, seriously though, that's wicked cool that you guys did that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've said it in social media, and I've said it to Todd, and they both inspire me. But Todd, one of the greatest days that I've experienced was, being invited to Todd's graduation for him to get into the full-time police force. These guys want to be cops forever.
Oh, right? I didn't even know that.
Oh yeah, well yeah, Tom was. Brother Tom was an Easton police officer.
I knew that, yeah.
Then he was a Seekonk police officer, and so that it was carrying the torch of being a police officer. But they wanted to be police officers, and they took tests and they did all of that. And it was tough to become a police officer for a long time, but they never gave up. And that was resilience of. I remember Todd going to the police academy, and I just saw a picture of him punching a pad. Yeah. And it looked like with brute force. And you see in the background, there's these younger, what could be considered stronger, cadets, candidates. And I talked to him and I'm like, hey, how are you doing? He's like, yeah, I'm doing good. I came in second in this. I came in first in this. And it's like, they're just so scrappy and such fighters with everything that they're just like head down and go after it. And I mean, the privilege that I had to be raised with that family, like Mr. Hedrick would always be like, hey, I'm claiming you on my taxes again this year, because I was at their house basically every day, it seemed like. But having those pieces of the puzzle as part of the story, I think, that's important, right? And that gets rid of the fakeness, the authentic piece. I had someone that so we've had people that bought the book from Hawaii to next door, my mother, and everywhere in between. And it was funny because there's some people that I really don't know that well that'll send me a message and they're like, I feel like I know your friends and family. And that was like what you wanted, right? That's what you want out of a book. You want people to feel like they know you based on your story. And even if it's a fantasy, you want them to think about, who's this guy that read it? Like, man, he's really cool, or where's his brain coming from with these ideas or whatever. You just want people to know who you are, right? To look at the book and go, wow, I can understand who this person is. So I just think that I don't know that I could write a fantasy, a non-real story. I think I would just. I admire you so much with that, because I'm like,
thank you.
He writes a book that's supposed to, like, I told someone the story the other day about how you and I got reconnected, because we hadn't talked in years.
Right.
I didn't know your sister was married to Tim. He's my neighbor. I was like, because she didn't have the Cady last name.
Right. Yeah.
So, and I didn't really, I saw them walking, but I never really, and I was telling somebody the story the other day, and I'm like, so he wrote a book, big book. And he went to publishers, and the publisher said, we're going to break that book into 2. And then you're going to write a trilogy. And I said, and then he goes and he does all this, and he does it in a year with a full-time job, with a wife and kids, with all this other stuff that goes along with it. It's like Superman.
Yeah.
And then you started texting me in the middle of the night, telling me about being on, getting all this stuff going and how excited you were and how amped up you were. And I'm like, now I know how he does it.
Yeah.
When I'm asleep, he's awake.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. 1 hour a day, just 1 hour a night, that as long as it's just that, at least as long as it's a minimum of 1 hour, then I'm like, okay. And that's worked for me. Like that's.
What's the most you've spent in a session of writing?
I bet maybe like over 2 hours. I've never hit 3 hours, but like definitely like 2 hours. Which 2 hours when you start at like 10 o'clock, it's like at the end you're like, okay, all right, But I don't want to.
Helps you sleep.
It can help me sleep, but. Also, it can be like that's a double-edged sword sometimes because I'll go into bed like even though I've told myself to stop writing or whatever, I'll go into bed and my mind will be going, okay, and then I'll grab my phone and I'm like making a note so I can write it the next day.
Yeah.
I had read somewhere that I forget what author. It's like a well-known author, but I don't know if it was Stephen King. I forget who it was, but they said that always like don't write everything that you want to write that night. Mm-hmm. Like, so don't finish without your complete thoughts that night. So the next day you pick it up and you'll be able to like just plow through again. And then like, so that never made sense to me, but I guess, because maybe it doesn't make sense to me because when I go into bed, after I stop writing, like I said, I'm thinking about it still. Mm-hmm. And I'll be thinking about it until, I wish I wrote that down. And then sometimes I will get up and write it down. Yeah. So it's, it's one of those things where you're constantly a work in progress, not just your work that you're writing, but your work, your mind, you got to almost get yourself to that point where like, all right, I got to stop. You got to sleep,
Yeah. My brain doesn't shut off. So if I did what you do, I'd be a ball of confusion at night. Yeah. Just thinking about everything that I want to write, ideas, thoughts. So I couldn't do that. Have you seen anybody like unplanned, like carrying your book or holding it or buying it or anything? Yeah.
Like someone I never met before?
Like no, just even someone that just happened to you happen to be someplace and you saw the book somewhere or something. See, that's
so that a couple of people at work have the book like that they're not even like copies that you guys had donated like they're ones that which thank you very much they had bought their own copy and then they put it on the shelf like in their office like a clinician had it. I'm like, oh cool, and then it's one I was like thank you, and then but the other thing is not necessarily like that, but the same kind of vibe as that is a friend of mine like I've been hanging out with, like he's been reading the books and he really is almost like super fan level where he's the one like he'll be picking out stuff. He's like, ooh, did you mean to do this like this? I like that you did this and were you thinking about this when you did this? And so we even went out one night, had a couple of beers, had a burger just to talk about the books, which was so cool experience for me. Yeah. I was just sitting there answering them questions. I'm like, yeah, no, and oh, what are you going to do with... Don't tell me what you're going to do. Don't tell me anything about book 3. But is this going to... here's my favorite character. And I'm like, oh, he's in book 3 a lot. And he's like, But it's awesome. Like, he loves the books. And it makes... Not only that, but, like, him loving the book so much and just being a good friend of mine, like, I feel the love. Like, it's one of those things where, like, oh, you really love the books. Like, you're not just supporting. You're not just reading and enjoying them. Like, you love them. And I'm like... That's the kind of thing that keeps me like, oh, all right, I'm jazzed. That keeps me moving on to the next one and being like, oh, you know what? Yeah. He's going to love that, because then you start thinking about the fans in general at that point, which is cool to even have a fan. Right. Like, like someone that appreciates what you wrote that much. And so. Yeah.
No, I was telling the story the other day because we've been soft on pushing the merchandise, the shirts and the coffee mugs and all that stuff just because it's too much, right? And you just can't juggle all the balls. And so I was talking the other day with somebody, said, what's the coolest experience you've had with your merchandise? I was like, we launched selling shirts in 2018 and I want to say it was 2021. It was after COVID. And I was walking through O'Hare Airport in my own little world. And I look up, guy I don't even know, wearing one of our shirts. And I look at him for a minute, and I'm like, that guy's wearing one of my shirts. That's awesome. And it was almost like I was mad for a second. Like he went in my drawer and took it. Yeah. And then I just smiled, and I'm like, that guy that I don't know, that I'll probably never meet or see again, is walking through the airport with a huge smile on his face, which I didn't even realize. That, think about it. I was wearing one of the shirts at the same time. So as he's walking and smiling, he doesn't know who I am.
Yeah.
And he's like, and it wasn't like an embarrassment, like, oh my God, I shouldn't have worn the shirt today. It was like, just like this smirk. I'm like, that is the coolest thing. And so they were like, what would the coolest thing for you to what would be the coolest thing with your book for you to experience? And I was like, for me to sit down on a plane, because 150 flights a year, for me to sit down on a plane and have somebody start reading my book and be like, hey,
that would be cool.
What you reading? Yeah. Right. So like, there's a guy I know, his name's Tom Chiz. He owns Armored One. He's a former SWAT police, New York police officer. And he started this company that does protection for schools. So armored, bullet resistant glass and film and training. And he started it right after Sandy Hook. That happened. He quit his job as a police officer, started this company, and now he's become remarkably successful with the business while helping fortify and protect schools and faculty and staff and students. And he came out with a book 6 months ago. And literally, I'm on a plane. The book just came out. I'm sitting next to the guy, and I look over, and I'm like, "Is that Tom Chiz's book?" He's like, "Yeah." I was like, "How is it? I haven't got my copy yet." Yeah. And he's like, "Oh, you want to get a copy of this?" I was like, "Yeah, I do." He's like, I said, "I know him really well. I ordered a copy. I haven't been home to see it." And we had this incredible conversation. I'm sitting there going, that was the experience. I was like, imagine if somebody has my book and they're reading it. And I'm just like, hey, how's that look? Right. Is that book any good?
Yeah.
Right? You know, and be wearing my blazer or whatever. Yeah. And they're just like, yeah, it's good. Whatever, you know?
Yeah. Look at the back.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, my goal is my only goal when I told Mark, when we decided to do it this way, the publisher and everything, was that, and I don't know if you've set like accomplishment goals, like where do you, like, I have very simple ones. Like I want to be in an unlikely story just because of the name.
Yeah.
Because I'm an unlikely story. I'm probably the most unlikely story of having a book. And that bookstore is just really, really cool.
It is cool.
I just like it. And I want to be, I don't care to be, if I'm in every Hudson book, I just want to be in the Hudson books at Terminal B at American Airlines, because I go through TSA and it's right there. And I just want to look and see the book and just be like, boom. Like, those are my goals. Yeah. Like, and my simple goal is I want one person to read it and get something out of it. I got that. Like that's happened. And that's great. And I hope more people do. But like, as far as the business side of things, like what you want to see, like that's where I'm at.
Right.
You know, I just think that'd be just cool. But to have a super fan, like to have
that,
somebody call you and be like, hey, let's go for beers and burgers. And I just want to pick your brain about the book.
That was next level cool. Cause I was like, I already, you know,
and he didn't even realize how that made you feel. It was just, he just genuinely loves what you did.
Right.
And is like, boom, let me just get some of your time and let's just chop it up and talk about it.
Right. That's all you want. I was like, this is going to be cool. And then my wife, I was like, I'm going to go hang out and you know, we're just going to talk about the books. And she goes, have a blast.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So it was fun. It was like all the questions, like he'd be asking me questions that I didn't even think about. Like I had to go back into the memory and think about it. I'm like, huh. And I'm like, I don't know.
Well, that was like I asked you with the first book, like, is Angela you, or is, I can't remember what I said.
Oh yeah,
like,
something like that, but yeah.
And you're like, huh, I didn't even think about that. Maybe. Yeah. I think that's something that's really cool, is like when people love what you do so much that they try to think about why you did it or how you did it. Or
I've had like numerous people tell me like, I love how you explore death, and I'm like, oh, I didn't really, you know, I mean, I know they're all dead, but I'm like, I didn't really like sit there and explore. Like I wasn't trying to go deep.
Wasn't trying to be morbid here. Sorry about that.
But even like, but they said, but you make it like easy to read about and easy to process, and like even with like teenagers, when they read it, they'll be able to think about it like that. Like it's not all like, you know, like it's hard to say. It's like not all morbid like that, but I'm like, it is still death. But they said, well, you make it easier to digest, I guess.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So third of the trilogy is up for pre-release.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sure you're selling a bunch on your website and your Kindle and on Amazon and all that stuff. Where do people go to get pre-order copies?
So you can go to either the publisher's website, watertowerhill.com,
Mm-hmm.
or the Kindle's up on Amazon, and basically like it'll be anywhere like books are sold online. So like Walmart.com, Target.com,
Yeah,
and
you were Barnes and Noble.
BarnesandNoble.com.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's pretty cool when you go to their websites and then you see it there. You're like, oh, that's another level of pretty neat. You know.
Anybody can get it.
Yep.
It's amazing and terrifying all at the same time.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, that's great, man. No, I wish you continued success. I hope your trilogy is the peak of this book part series that you're doing. You're really relaxed. I thought you were going to come in here and be a ball of nerves. And I'm like, this is great. We're going to have two guys. We have a guy that just got his book released yesterday and has been running around hand delivering for 2 days. And we got a guy 11 days out that's probably got all sorts of nerves going. And you're coming in here like cool as a cucumber. You really,
I'm telling you, enjoy the ride.
I'm enjoying it.
The first like I said, the first book I was like you. I'm like, oh, okay, and then, but now it's like, enjoy the ride.
Well, just the fact that people want me to sign a book.
Yeah.
Is crazy.
Well, that's the best part too.
That it's so surreal.
Now, I always, and I got called out on it a couple times because like people were like, "Hey, you wrote the same thing in mine that you wrote in his," or it's like I'm like, well, but it's from the heart. Like, thank you so much for supporting me.
Yeah, I did a book signing yesterday for 100 employees at a company, and I was trying to change as much of it as I was asking a lot of questions of each person I signed. But it's hard. I mean, you've got a limited amount of time, and but you want to give them a positive message. And I was at one point I was just like, I just write, "You are awesome." I've got a book signing for 700 next week in New Jersey, and I'm like, how? That's gonna take 3 days. Like I don't have enough markers for that, right? So it's like, how do I do it? Like and I just figure out how to do a signature, and it's so terrible.
But it's a good problem to have.
Yeah, no, it is. So, hey, man. Thanks for coming for third episode. The beard is looking glorious. Let it keep growing. Let those kids continue to win on occasion.
Yeah.
And let's get back and hear about the success and the readiness for book 4, the personal story, and the next part of the fantasy or whatever you want. You're welcome back anytime. It's always great to have you.
Thank you very much. And good luck with everything. You're off to a great start.
Oh yeah.
Proud of you.
It is. Thank you. I appreciate it. It's been amazing. And I have to thank my man Adam over at ECAT, because ECAT wanted to do a day documentary and ride around with me and put together what it was like to do what we did. And Adam drew the short straw. I think he draws a short straw with everything, whether it's running a Spartan race or sitting in a truck with me all day. And the first stop was at the Kunas.
Nice.
And they still have horses. So
wow, okay.
So I actually gave Mrs. Kuna her copy. I signed it in the barn while she was getting the 2 horses hay and getting it squared away.
That's awesome.
Couldn't have started any better.
That's awesome.
So, but no, this is great, man. Congratulations. We'll put your how to get books on the show notes, and we'll have you back again soon.
Thank you, sir.
And that'll do it for another episode. I thank everybody that pre-ordered. I thank everybody that got us a number 1 and 2 in multiple top seller categories in the last 24 hours on Amazon. We are very appreciative for the 5-star ratings and reviews. That does help us get exposure and more opportunities for people to buy the book. So if we've earned your feeling of a 5-star rating or review, we would love to see it. And I really appreciate this journey and just the amount of support that I've received over the last number of years. You have made this all just amazing, and like I say, it's very surreal. I still am not feeling like this is real. It just is wild. So, in the meantime, if you can be anything, be awesome. We'll talk to you soon.
Come to you from underneath a peach blossom. It's time for an episode of Be awesome. Find positivity throughout your life and work. Just like our mascot rooster, Steve the Jerk.